Hi, this is Phil from skitalk.com, and we've got some incredible news here about Peak Skis in addition to their new team, Chris Davenport. So let's talk.
First of all, I'd like to say that it's great to have all three of you here. We've had a handful of interviews. We've had Bode and Chris have both been on our Ski Talk Live with Dan Egan. We've spent a lot of time with you over the last 15 years, Chris, off and on. And I just would like to say that I really appreciate you guys all as industry professionals, because we're in an industry where people tend to be late and leave you hanging. And all three of you are really responsive at answering texts and emails, and you always show up on time. And we thank you for that, and thought our followers should know that as well.
No, it's the ski racer. It's the ski racer background. When you miss your start, you don't just say, "Oops, let me go now." You're done for the day. It ingrains something very early about being on time and being prepared.
Awesome. Yeah. So we have Andy Wirth here, co-founder and CEO. He's been in the CEO in the industry and done pretty much everything, haven't you? and also with us today is Chris Davenport and Bode Miller, two U.S. Ski and Snowboard Hall of Fame members, and Bode being the brainchild of Peak Skis and the face, and Chris Davenport is joining the executive leadership team. Chris, what's your role going to be?
Yeah, well, thanks, Trish. Thanks, Phil. Super great to see you guys and get back on Ski Talk. And yeah, I am like overjoyed beyond words to be joining this team, this incredible group of individuals. And my role will be multifaceted, as everyone's role in this company really is. It's kind of an all hands on deck type of team. But I really see my role as kind of twofold. One being as consumer facing as possible, being out there at ski areas, trying to get these skis on people, just getting a lot of visibility. So it's sort of a marketing communications role, if you will, as a brand ambassador, brand leader, and brand partner. But then also I love the innovative side of being in a startup like this. So working on some new ski designs going forward, testing, probably more than any other brand out there. I just, as you guys know, I love to be on snow, and no matter what I'm doing, I love sort of every aspect of it. So we're all going to wear a lot of hats, and this is just a really fun project, and in my career coming at a really great time.
You know, it's pretty obvious that you love being on snow, because you have a really awesome goggle tan going on there in August.
Do I have a good goggle tan? Well, yeah, I've just come back from 2.5 weeks of skiing in Portillo, Chile. You know, of course, it's winter down there. And this is my 20th year working at Portillo. I run a ski camp, and I brought 5 pairs of Peak skis down there, and we had them on lots of different people, and including my coaches, Darren Rolves and Mike Douglas and Ingrid Backstrom all skied on these skis. And so that was really fun. It's hard to know what you're talking about in the ski world when it comes to how skis perform if you don't try a lot of other people's products. So we love doing that, and it helps inform, the way we talk about skis and the way we build skis. And you just got to know what's going on out there in the industry.
Yeah, funny. We had Darren Rolves here about 2 weeks ago. We now doing some mountain biking. He was over and playing with the skis and flexing them and asking a lot of questions about them. So obviously this didn't happen over the course of the past couple of weeks. I mean, this is probably happen over the course of a couple of months, even a year. Walk us through the timeline of how this relationship started. Bode, start with you.
For us, we look at this. Andy and I are both, I think, have a very similar view of any project is about the team members. The product in the end is critical, and that's it ends up being a cumulative effect of many different people's efforts and input and processes. But when we've been building this team now, really, Andy and I have been building it over the course of several different iterations through Crossan and honestly through other projects we do. It morphed into what we have now, and obviously Chris is an asset to probably companies in several different industries, but being that he's the most prolific, experienced in skiing, it was just a natural fit. I've known him known of him for 3+ decades. more probably, and known him personally, 20, 25 years, we're from right down the road from each other. He's North Conway guy out of Tash and grew up ski racing there. And, I worked together on the ski team. He's announced and commentated races. We did have a chance to ski together a couple, but not now in a long time, but, just a guy who brings the complete package. So when Andy and I are looking at, what additions to the team would make sense and would be kind of, obvious and no-brainers, Chris is he's at the top of that list. I mean, somebody who, as we've talked about, Phil, we want people who live the sport, who love it, who have done it, their whole lives, who have made a conscious effort to make it better for other people, to bring it to other people, to innovate, to push the sport forward, but who at the bottom line would do it whether or not anyone else did it with them, whether they were being paid or not. We'd all find a way to be out there in the mountains skiing, and Chris is that guy. So brings a huge amount of experience and knowledge and creativity to the innovation side, as well as obviously his business acumen.
Andy, coincidentally on our Facebook timeline, our interview from Squaw in 2016 came up when we were talking about the World Cup coming to Squaw. So it's kind of serendipitous that did come up. I mean, what was your role in this as far as bringing Chris in? I mean, I know you're writing the checks, so.
I appreciate that. And I'm thrilled to see that Squaw, actually Palisades, is welcoming back World Cup skiing. That was terrific news and great. So, I'm not writing the check. There's a team. We have investors. Bode and I are kind of the mainstays on that. But yeah, definitely involved in a couple of key aspects of running the business and developing the business. And like Bode mentioned, we have a really world-class team here. A group of folks: Mark Peruzzi, Darren Haugen, Tracy Ching, our CMO. We have a great world-class team. But as it relates to Chris and Dav coming on board, by the way, is my audio okay, guys? I hear a little bit of echo.
Great.
Okay. So I've known Chris for quite a while. I'm more of a Colorado guy than I'm not. And World Cup races and Aspen and Snowmass and just being around, certainly have known Chris and known him better through the years. Mutual friends, JT Holmes and quite a few others, and that whole tribe. And I've known Chris to be sorry guys, can you hear that back or no?
There, but I think for the most part, we'll get it.
Okay.
The subtitles are really interesting in this one.
Okay, got it. So known Chris for quite a while, and then have always held him in very high regard on so many different fronts. Got to know him quite a bit better over the past couple of years, particularly as it relates to his intellect, his thoughtfulness, as it relates to performance and product and more. And when Bode and I were talking about every element of this business, which I'd like to think no stone has gone unturned, but Chris, came to the fore in my mind, not just because of his fame, because of his success, his athleticism and being an outfitist as much as anything, but also his intellect of what he brings to the company relative to product design, creative side of what we're trying to develop and get going. And Bill, you and I talked about this a little bit. The innovation side of our ethos is absolutely core and fundamental. And as I said, we're not here to do what's been done before. And Chris has got this great heritage, this legend, and that gets attention. But at the same time, perhaps more importantly, his ability to help us drive innovation across the board on everything we do is very welcomed. He's just a perfect team. It's critical to understand he's not an ambassador, spokesperson. He's that, but he's a member of our leadership team. Phil, it's critical to understand that.
I think that's great. And Chris, I mean, you've been here before. You've worked at a company starting pretty much from a name that was gone away for a while, being Kästle. I mean, you spent 15 years with them. So you've got some good experience and you'll be able to bring a lot of knowledge to this. So, and I think, as an asset, I see that being there. In your time with Kästle, you've had a lot of successes. Now, what have you learned from them? And what are a couple of things that you might do differently now and starting with Peak?
Yeah, that's a great question. You're absolutely right. There's no substitute for experience, and I'm so grateful for all of the years that I had at Kästle. I learned many things as one would, and as you might imagine. But I think the thing that I take with me from that experience is when we were at our best, it's when we had the best team of people, and everybody was working well together, communicating well together, respecting each other. And when we didn't have that, it sort of trickled down into the product and into the skis and things. And so I'm a big believer in, first and foremost, to have success, you got to have a great team. You got to have super people around you that are going to bring out the best in you. And really, that was one of the main reasons I wanted to join Peak. So I'm looking forward to working with these guys that I've known and respected for a long time. And I think it's kind of, I don't know if there's a team like this out there in the industry. It's really exciting. And you know, we all come at this project from different angles. Of course, Andy with incredible CEO and financial experience, and Bode and I both with a lot of innovation and ski design and development experience, but also just the industry side of things, being well known and being well respected. And hopefully we will be able to use that, leverage that to get people to take a look and get people on our product. So yeah, lots of life lessons over the years with these other ski brands that I get to now bring to the table here with in many ways a clean whiteboard that we can just brainstorm and incredibly new ideas on.
We attended an event at Outdoor Retailer in the winter called Win Winters. I got the couple here, Win Winter, and Scarpa was a huge part of that. Is Scarpa, does that fit anywhere in this process with you guys?
Well, you know, I've been working with Scarpa for 11 or 12 years now, and they are just another incredible industry brand and an incredible industry partner. And of course, you know that Bode came on board with Scarpa this past year too. So it's kind of fun that we're teammates on more than just one brand and partners. But the Scarpa thing, you know, that's its own company, and they do ski boots, so we don't really have crossover there, with the exception that we share a ton of values together, principally being sustainability practices when it comes to our products and our innovations. Scarpa is a real leader there. In fact, you guys might know, but we're launching our new Quattro boot this fall, and it's the world's first plant-based ski boot. It's made with 100% renewable energy right there at the factory, and a supply chain that comes from a very close proximity. So that's an incredible story, and it's one of the things I'm most proud of that I get to work on right now. So there's a lot of crossover there between Scarpa and Peak, but yet they're two obviously separate entities.
Go ahead.
Okay, Andy, now you guys are going to be a direct-to-consumer brand as far as with Peak, and how do you see that working? And Chris, I mean, that's a new area for you all, normally being retailers, but now you're dealing with the consumer on a one-to-one level that way. And one of the questions that has come up in this type of model is people want to demo skis, they want to try skis. Are you going to have demo centers? How that's going to be out there? Chris, you had mentioned before that we started the video here that you're going to be out there being out there, and I mean, are you gonna be pulling your van around? You be turning screws, I mean, checking DIN charts?
You've done that before. You're gonna go ski with your ski talk girls?
Yeah, I am. All of the above. You can't do enough of this stuff, whether it's going to on snow demos, you know, getting out there with ski instructors and skiing on the product. I just want to get these skis on as many people as possible. That's the goal in the short term. And as you said, and Andy can speak to this, being a direct to consumer brand comes with its own set of challenges, but also with its own set of opportunities and ones that we are really ready to take advantage of. So Andy, why don't you talk more about that direct to consumer model, why we're doing that, and you know, how we're going to do it.
That's a perfect setup, a perfect lead in, Chris. It does. We modeling this, and a lot of the analytics coming into building the business and the brand last summer, Phil, led us to conclude that really the best means by which for us to launch the brand and launch the skis would be direct to consumer e-com. And it'd be important because I know a lot of the folks that watch and listen to Ski Talk are fans of mountain biking and cycling. And since Chris has got that t-shirt on, I'll make reference. The guy who brought canyon bikes into the US in 2015 has become and in the better part of a year and a half leading up to that, they were, that the analogy there is quite apparent, and that is bike shops are where you buy bikes. They brought in really an outstanding, if not superior product, and brought it into the US in 2015 on direct to consumer via e-com. And they had great success with that. And we hope to follow suit and specifically talk to that gentleman quite a bit. He opened up his learnings, kind of plus delta. Here's what we would change. And we've been able to adopt that. We've had that benefit of an analogous industry sector, if you will, and applied a lot of that to our thinking. And that emboldened us to launch Peak Ski Company as direct to consumer over e-com. As Chris thoughtfully mentions, it comes with some challenges and risks. And, with the financial engineering side of my experience, it comes with an obligation to build mitigants. And so we have those in place. But what's also in place with the business model is the tremendous benefit served us by be able to be in direct contact with our consumer. And there's nothing in between Bode, Chris, Andy, and our team and our consumer. And that is a tremendous benefit for us. And we're actually just at the front edge of taking advantage of that, but most importantly, critically, developing a community, kind of a tribe in and of itself around calling them consumers doesn't sound right. The mountain people that want to take on our skis and enjoy them. That's really, we're developing a community around Peak with that in mind. And so when you use DTC or direct consumer, all these trade names, it's important to know that the way Chris and Bode and I see it in this model is it allows us to be in direct communication with the folks who are thinking about our skis, buying our skis, and getting on the skis. And it allows us great feedback loop and more. And so there are mitigants, and yeah, we'll be showing up to Tahoe and the Roaring Fork Valley, Aspen Snowmass, and Vail, certainly Big Sky, with skis to put them on underneath people's feet and get them to try them out. That's the challenge of the risk, but we have some plans afoot to go ahead and put a mitigant in place, and that is get them to the snow and get them underneath people's feet. Critically, it's risk-free for folks, right? There's a 30-day money-back guarantee. A bit simplistic, but certainly been done before in many industries, but learned from Canyon is they knew that the risk in place would be people get bikes from bike shops and you can't test drive this bike, if you will. And they put that money-back guarantee into place and they had very few returns. And that emboldened us to advance on this model. There's a tremendous advantage to it, but we understand, and I have to say, there was a truckload of respect for all of the great people who have run ski companies and ski shops and the like, and we're working closely with many of them in terms of, in some cases, sending our skis directly to a favorite ski shop for folks for bindings being mounted. So we're doing everything we can to make it a smooth, seamless experience for the customer. But everything about what we've developed is very respectful, very sincerely about what's gone on in the past in the ski companies and the ski shops and the like. It's critical to know that.
Yeah, Phil, I would just contribute that that was a really important piece of this was, ultimately it's a testament to our belief in the product, right? Is you don't do a 30-day money back guarantee if you're selling crap because it won't work well. So, but because of that challenge of the demo concept and how even a really solid demo fleet, which I've worked with, many different companies over the years and watched how they operate those demo fleets and seen a bunch of companies that I wasn't working with try to do the same thing. And I think there's value to that, right? They're doing what they can, but the reality is you want to give somebody more than just a couple hours, more than just one day, more than just a few runs on one surface, one condition. You want to really give them the chance to put the skis through the ringer, to test them out and decide for themselves, is this a better product for me? Is this going to make my ski experience better? So that was really important to all of us. And we felt like we stood behind the product to that degree where Certainly, if it's not the right product for somebody, we want them to send it back and get their money back. We just believe that what we built is going to be shockingly diversely appealing, which is a little bit of an outside of the norm kind of concept. Everybody believes, similar to golf, similar to lots of sports, where the performance criteria for an expert, for a beginner, for one surface to another tends to be kind of bifurcated. And in this case, we think we've kind of hit something that works really well across the board. And that's, in my mind, I believe that every golfer wants the same thing. They all want a super forgiving club that goes the same distance every time they hit it, that's super predictable, that allows a lot of feel and touch and all that stuff. Everyone say, well, that's not possible. So we've made two. We've made a pro model that pros can use, and then a beginner model that doesn't do any of those things, but does the things that beginners want. And I would say that that's very analogous to the ski world. And in this case, we didn't like that at all. And I think, as we go into this, you're going to be able to sort of witness firsthand the impact that these skis have on a first-time skier, how it builds confidence, how it actually helps to accelerate their confidence growth and their skill set growth. And then all the way up to, Chris, myself, some of the guys who really push the skis to the limit, how it's honestly the same things. We all want the same things. So, to keep in mind, what Chris and I have done over the last bunch of decades is actually a very much a direct consumer thing, right? For us, we are the person who's in contact with people, who rides the lift with people, who, through Chris's events and all the things I do, skiing with people. Yes, we're both. We're also show up in commercials or articles or ads, but really the majority of it is talking to people and really understanding that. And I think in that sense, it's cool to actually have a company that kind of operates that way, as opposed to us being this kind of side version that deals with the real face-to-face interactions with people.
Well, we deal with a lot of direct-to-consumer brands, and quite frankly, your reviews right now are some of our most read for coming into this coming season. And you guys are great endorsements, but a lot of times people are coming to us for real-world reviews. And having the skis that are behind us, we've got the 98 and the 88 here, that we're also able to get onto people's feet. And I think maybe about a half dozen pairs so far have been purchased from our site and our endorsements of the skis, because it is a very good product. And again, with these skis, again, we're not saying, oh my God, this is the best thing for everybody. And like you just said, Bode, we need to help find that ideal skier for these skis, and talking about them. And the more that we talk about them really helps to create that most positive experience, because as our tagline is, skiing is fun. So we want to have it as much fun for everybody as we can. So I know Tricia has a question as far as where we're going in evolution as far as gender and such.
We had a pretty serious discussion a few years ago on our website, because there are a lot of smaller men who can't find unisex skis that fit them. And there are women who are taller, bigger, stronger. I mean, Chris has met Susan, who used to be our site editor, a couple times. She's like 5'10", super athletic, and she tends to ski a longer ski. And so we had this discussion, is it necessary to have a women's specific ski, or is it better to just have different flexes and different lengths? Do you guys plan on doing anything to get a women's specific model out, or are you thinking you're going to stay with the different flexes and different sizes to effectively?
Bode, take this one on the front end, but don't mind.
We've talked about this a bunch, and I've been a part of many discussions over the years about exactly this. And, Phil, I think I've told you, when I retired in 2009, Heinz Hemmerly, who was my technician at the time, was extremely upset with me because I just left World Championships in Val d'Isere, and went back home, and I was winning, going to win 2 titles that year in the World Cup, and I just didn't come back because I was so discouraged and kind of bummed out with the direction of things. So he took all my skis and went to Lindsey, and Lindsey proceeded to win 40 plus World Cup races of her 73 or 6 or whatever she has on my skis, not skis that looked like mine, but actually my skis. And I think Lindsey's a bigger girl. Sure, she's strong, she's super skilled. But I think the reality is that my skis didn't know that she had boobs or her name was Lindsey. My skis react to how she puts pressure on them and how hard she pushes them. So the idea of building skis that work well for lots of people, I think, is pretty obvious, and people have been trying to do that for a long time. The reality is that the evolution we've gone through with side cut and rocker and all these things, they tend to actually exacerbate some of the problems that you're probably touching on, about weight differentials, about positioning on the ski, about aggressiveness versus sort of smearing or edge angles and all that. And the reality is the way that I designed that with the keyhole, it just takes a lot of that away. It takes a lot of the pressure away. I don't think you want to have gender specific skis. I hope we make skis that have graphics that are appealing to lots of people, but that's kind of the extent of it in reality. I think that I've skied with women who ski as aggressively and hard as anybody else, and I've skied with men who ski very, very gently on their edges and low edge angles. So I do think that what we've done that you'll see is kind of unique, and that the shorter skis, because they have so much less side cut than a typical ski of a 160 something length, they end up skiing really maneuverable. So for a beginner, they're really pretty easy to move around. The balance point is super predictable. It's always kind of right in front of your binding. You'll get this positive feedback kinesthetically, but then also they're fairly stout. I mean, if you feel those 160 somethings and you flex them, they don't feel like a little kid's ski, which you will find a lot of the 150 something, 160 something skis tend to be very soft. And the reason is because that if you consider how much a ski typically bends, what arc does a ski typically get to in a normal day of skiing, it honestly is no different between me and a 100-pound woman. The ski doesn't actually bend more or less with either one of us. It's a very moderate bend. You can bend the ski with your hands more than you can that it ever gets bent in a turn, say on snow. It's always touching snow, so it just doesn't have a lot of room to bend a ton. If you hit a big bump or something, you might get it to flap around a bunch, but the reality is that amount of weight that you're bending with your hands is always way less than what the person weighs when they're in the middle of a turn. So in the sense that people think of a stiff ski or a soft ski, that's really has nothing to do with how the ski performs. It really doesn't. All within the scope of the range of skis that are out there now. What really matters is where the pressure falls on the ski and how that interacts with edge angle. Because somebody with less edge angle wants something that is consistent, that gives them feedback, that they don't feel like the ski is just always smudging sideways. They want grip. But then typically that grip can work against them as that edge angle goes higher and higher. It starts to get really hard to balance. The tip will grip too much or the tail. So we did spend a bunch of time, and it was a very specific goal of mine to mitigate all that. So reducing side cut, creating a really stable balance point that I think ultimately is going to make this much easier to understand. Once people get on them, I think that's when they'll sort of sense that wow, somebody who's 5'5" and 115 pounds could ski a 176 or 178, no problem, because it doesn't ski like a typical, like you've felt a 178 feeling. I mean, look at all of us. We're all of the age where we grew up skiing on 210s, I was a little kid when I skied on my first 207s, and yeah, they were tough to turn, but they just did different things than the shape skis do. If I skied on a 207 shape ski, that's a very different thing. You're feeling a lot of that length because the widest point is so far out there and the widest point at the tail are so far apart. So, again, I'm excited to see people experience what we've come up with, because I do think it's noticeably different. I think they'll enjoy it.
I mean, from my standpoint, because I get this question a lot, being a female reviewer, and part of the reason that I asked that is because I've been asked that question. I would rather see the differences be set up in the binding setup or the ski boot setup than the ski itself. Does that make sense? And then the other thing is now I lost my train of thought. But when I'm asked this question, I will say to them, they'll say, I've had a woman actually, they don't have women's skis. And I'm like, are you a skier? Yes. Well, they make skis for skiers. So that's.
Yeah, the biggest thing, as you touched on, is that women, smaller people and women specifically, tend to have much smaller boots, right? That's a big thing. And there's been a really long, frustrating process around boot design, because as the boots get smaller, there's certain mechanical things that kind of fall out of balance there. A boot's typically meant to be a 26.5, right? 25.5, 26.5 is about the sweet spot. Anything bigger than that, you start having weird mechanical interactions. Anything smaller than that, you start having weird mechanical reactions. They haven't really got that right. But within that, the mounting position on the ski and what that theoretically means of where their knee sits, right? If I had a size 23 foot in a ski boot with my tib fib length, it would be really strange, because my knee would be sitting way out over the front of the binding, right? Those are things that we feel like are really important to discuss, to educate about. And we're going to have tutorial videos on the site, the site when it launches in September 19th, about exactly that conversation. Hey, if your boots are this, and Chris and I will be on that together, sort of going, look, these are all things we've played with for decades, is like, what does moving your mounting position a little bit forward when you ramp the binding up, or, your ramp angle or your boot board, when these things change, what does that mean? And if you have a smaller foot, where should you be? Should you be in the same exact boot center as somebody who has a much bigger foot? And the reality is that has kind of been left untouched for a lot of years, at least in the consumer market. And we feel like it's a critical part. I would say that's, as you touched on, Tricia, that's more important than a lot of the other things that are common talking points. Is like, those are actually impactful and need to be discussed and sort of, I would say, sorted through.
Well, one of the things that we discussed a lot, and we don't want to get down this rabbit hole, but stack height and how that changes the reaction of the ski. And in that demo process where somebody tests a ski that a binding that has a 34 millimeter stack height on that stand height, then gets their retail version of binding that's 15 to 18 millimeters high, that changes the dynamics of that ski dramatically.
Yeah, exactly. And there's, I think probably more so than most people, certainly we're in the top 1%. Chris and I understand the system, right? You touched on Scarpa. We understand the interaction between our bodies, honestly, our minds, our bodies, our ski boots, our bindings, our plates, the stack height, the side cut, the mounting position. And we've experienced it real time. We've experienced it out in the mountains where your life is on the line. So, I think that's something that we both feel strongly that we need to have those discussions. We need to help educate people and give them as honest an approach as we can, but also just open the conversation to, look, there are other things in this system that maybe aren't common talking points that are really relevant and that we should all sort of discuss and figure out, because the reality is it is a very personalized sport. Things are different for every different person, and you want to give them permission to know that and to have the knowledge to maybe self-assess and experiment with stuff.
So the other question I have for you, you're going to stay unisex skis. I like that. The next question is, you've got children. Are you going to have kids?
100%. It's been a huge frustration point. I hate to keep you hear me say that because it sounds like all I am is pissed off. But if you followed me the last 20 years, you could sense that while I loved my sport and I put my best energy into it, there was a lot of frustration interlaced there. And children's skis is one of them. My kids' skis that I buy now, we have, 25 or 30 pairs, and it's like they cut the middle out of my ski and put a kid's binding on it. It makes no sense that in that case, we've crossed over the line of they cannot bend that ski because their weight just isn't enough. And yet they put on, 4 meters of side cut, 4 meter radius side cut on the thing too. Which just makes it really erratic. The tip grabs and the tail grabs, and you see these kids sitting back because that's the only safe part of that ski. The tip is going to go crazy because it's got 4 meters of radius. So yes, we will. Again, we've built an economic model that I think gives us the latitude to do really cool stuff. Typically, kid skis are not a massive moneymaker, and I wouldn't say that we have a very specific plan to make a bunch of money off kid skis, but I do think it's an important thing for me, purpose-built for my kids, and we'll do that. But it isn't our focus this fall. We're still kind of building out the line.
And Chris's kids are growing up.
Yeah. And racing.
Hardly kids anymore, actually. Yeah, 2 in college, 1 about to graduate college, and 1 in high school, and they're men. Skiing on big boy skis. They're all skiing on my skis, and they're all skiing on Peak now, so that's cool.
What skis have you had an opportunity to get on so far, Chris?
Yeah, so coming to the last couple of weeks in Chile, I flew down there with 5 pairs of skis. So I brought the Peak 110, the 104, the 104 SC, which is our lighter weight side country model, the 98 and the 88. So I guess that's 5 out of our current 6 models that we have in the lineup. So that was great. We had a lot of powder, so I did spend quite a bit of time on those 110s, and my gosh, they were fabulous. We've got an amazing photo that we will be sharing with our press release of me with my hip on the snow, arcing a turn in the powder. And that ski, you can just tell, is doing its thing. It's so beautiful. It made me feel so good. And then I spent quite a bit of time down there skiing on the 104 SC, mounted with a lightweight touring binding. So, and driving that all with the Quattro XT boot from Scarpa. And it was the perfect setup. I mean, I was just blown away at how good that ski performed in a variety of conditions, because not only did we have powder days, but then the sun came out, we skied corn snow, we had early morning firm, hard snow. We had the Austrian men's speed team there training. So it's cool to watch those guys. But in fact, Bode, you'll like this. They were all asking me about you and what this deal is with Peak skis, because they saw me on the skis. So yeah, Matthias and the boys were all curious what was going on with Peak. But yeah, so had those 5 pairs down there, had just awesome experience and feedback, got them on a lot of instructors, my coaches, my family. So it all went really well.
Well, I want to add, Textrovert, one of our loyal followers on the site, an avid Instagrammer and self-proclaimed internet sleuth, did the math with your little, let's call them Peak leaks.
Yes.
And figured out your destination was Peak. But yeah, one of his questions was, with the new Keyhole technology and how it's presented and initially pitched, how does that compare to Hollowtech and your experience with Kästle and 2 designs that are working with the constructions of the skis?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, they in some ways serve 2 different purposes. The Hollowtech being a milled out section of the tip on a Kästle that reduces the weight at the tip. So it's swing weight, it's dampening, and really it's also our visual identity. Those skis with a beautiful colored tip serves both of those functions. But with the Keyhole technology that Bode developed, it's really hidden inside of the ski. It's not something that is there, at least not right now. And it's quite brilliant, actually, because I hadn't really thought of cutting out a section of the metal laminate in the ski and having that have such an impact on the way the ski enters the turn, the way that torsional rigidity holds up, and the way that it makes the ski feel. But it's noticeable. And, I think that in the future, we'll have some discussions around making it more of a visual presence as well. Because, right now it's kind of like a BMW M5 without the badge on it. You don't know that it's a wolf in sheep's clothing. And that's really what these skis are.
Oh, you expand a little more on the Keyhole?
What was that?
Expand a little bit more on the Keyhole, because a lot of people, they hear a hole in the ski, they don't understand and can differentiate the differences. And I think a lot of the laymen, I think this is really going to help them visualize and how that's going to react on snow. Yeah.
Yeah. So obviously, it was something that developed in my mind over a very long period of time. And I was the beneficiary of it being present in some of the best skis I ever skied on in varying forms. But as I mentioned before, the longitudinal flex of a ski, while it is the most noticeable, it's the most sort of, I would say, talked about element of skis, in terms of characteristics. It's there. It doesn't actually, because you can bend it with your hands, and we're talking about a full-size human, regardless of whether they're 110 pounds or 250 pounds, and it's supported by snow all the time, that longitudinal flex is not what gives you power out of the ski. It's not what gives you pop. It's not what gives you really anything. I mean, honestly, except the flapping effect of the tip probably is about the only thing that really actually happens. All the energy, all the sensation, all the loading, the entry point of the turn, all those things are dictated by the torsional flex. It's how the ski twists. And the evolution kind of bummed me out as we went, when we had these regulations in World Cup, which typically that sort of technology or philosophy filters down into the production skis. We started getting, when they made the radius longer in giant slalom and set those radius limitations or minimums, they started using the widest point of the tip, the actual tip curve where the tip starts, to cheat the side cut numbers, because it was like early rise or rocker, but in a very extreme version, because it's right where the tip is bending up and it gets so much wider there that when you tip that part up, the tip that hits the snow is actually already pre-bent because it's the tip of your ski. And it creates this hyper aggressive entry to the turn. The problem with that is it's way, way out at the very tip, right? So if that hits any bumps, and inevitably the ski can't bend as much as that is bent. So it starts this hyper aggressive chatter wobble that often doesn't make it all the way back to your foot, but the tip is constantly going like this because it's trying to make a turn that's much more aggressive than what the rest of the ski is actually doing. And the keyhole was born out of that, the desire to have that same concept, but in a much more practical and logical way. And when you want to unload a ski, with longitudinal flex and torsional flex sort of being put aside, it requires the ski to have energy loaded up, right? Kinetic energy in the ski. And this, by bringing it way back to right by under your foot, it just makes all that more consistent. It'd be like, having hockey skates on versus having cross-country skis on, right? Like if there's all this space where a number of different things can happen, you can hit a piece of snow, you can hit a piece of ice way out at the tip, and it can disrupt the whole thing and make it not give you energy back, versus something that's directly under your foot and really has nowhere to go. It's kind of trapped under there. That was really the concept that was important to me, because I felt like it transcended ability level. It made it so that somebody who was a beginner could feel the confidence and the sensation right away, because it just feels like it's under your foot. You don't have something awkward. I mean, we all stand on our 2 feet all day. I wanted a ski that felt like that, where it wasn't some big change from the normal. It was like, oh, I can feel under my foot. I can feel the ski right there pushing against me, and I can make turns as I want. And then as you ramp that edge angle up, I'm still very curious. Chris and I haven't had a chance to talk about it, but that 104 SC, was the most exceptional ski I've ever skied on. And that's including my World Cup skis and all the other stuff. In terms of the context that I put it in, I put it through every different condition I could find and tipped it up to really high edge angle, ski GS courses on it. And it really went past what I believed it was going to do. And the fact that not only does it create really solid grip underfoot and a really consistent balance point where I knew exactly where I had to push or where I could lay into it, but it gives you way more energy back out of the turn. I mean, I was able to launch myself when I timed the release of the pressure, because you're moving that torsion all the way back underfoot. You're just capturing much more of it. You're capturing much more of that force. When I was at super high edge angle, full gas, I was able to launch myself 15 feet sideways and land at a super high edge angle on the other side. And that's typically something that you only get out of a World Cup slalom ski. And even then, you better be on good snow, because if that thing is, hits a bump right as you're about to unload, you're just on your hip and the turn is over and you're just doing a Polish donut down the hill. So, I think that, it's going to be fun for us to evolve this, because it is the first step of a lot of innovation that I know we have in our minds, but it's such a critical one because it really touches on the fundamental of what skiing is for me, which is confidence. It's about, being confident that you know what your ski is going to do and the ski doing what it's supposed to do as often as possible.
I think one of the things that we found when we ski the skis, and if we boil it down to one word, I think the skis are obtainable as far as what the performance of the skis and what a layman can get an everyday Joe and Jane skier. We put some good, solid, intermediate, advanced skiers on them, and they came back really happy, and they were surprised, and they wondered, well, I mean, if this ski works for me, how does it work for a Bode Miller and now a Chris Davenport as far as what's the broad range here? But what you've done as far as with that shape on the skis, and I think the keyhole and adding that little bit of torsional flex in front of that binding really does make a difference in how these skis do react and making them really accessible. Again, guys, thanks a ton for this. I mean, the timing of this works really well. We're excited about this announcement. So we're going to get this out in a timely manner. I think this is just a ton of great information. And it was just so fun having you guys here on the show. I mean, this was just super. And in the end, with your skis and everything, as we'll close everything out, is skiing is fun. To read the full review of this ski, please go to skitalk.com and click on the review tab.
Please also hit the like button and subscribe to our YouTube channel to see more reviews and other ski-related content, and add thoughts in the comment section below.
Of course, follow skitalk.com on all of our social media channels. And remember, no matter how still you are, Ben Stiller.